Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first session today. Thank you to Kerry, thank you to Henry for getting the ball rolling. I think it's an important reminder of why we're here today. Yesterday, our first plenary session focused on 9 years after 9/11, are we safer? And it was primarily about homeland security, if you like. But one of the themes of that discussion was how our homeland security is inseparable from what goes beyond our borders, and that really is the theme we want to develop further with this panel on old and new frontiers. We have a really distinguished panel with us today, and I'll start at the far end and go through. Dr. Abdul Karim Al-Irani, former Prime Minister of Yemen, which we've heard a lot about, and a senior advisor to President Saleh. Sabri Saidam, senior advisor to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, and also a founder of the Palestinian E-Initiative. I believe he had a meeting at Google yesterday. Dr. Robert Rotberg, distinguished and world-renowned academic from the Belfer Center at Harvard University, and an author of numerous books on Africa, including the state failure and state weakness in Africa, most recently. And finally, last but not least, Ali Jalali, former Interior Minister of Afghanistan and a professor at the NISA Center, our partners for this conference, of course. Let me start nearest to me and start with you, Minister Jalali. Al-Qaeda, as we will hear in this panel, are moving elsewhere beyond Afghanistan, and that's something that's developed since 9/11, since the invasion of Afghanistan. Does that mean that they have been defeated in Afghanistan itself? How serious is the threat?
Well, it's still a serious threat. Actually, maybe the numbers of Al-Qaeda are not as many as they were before 9/11, but the influence is there. Actually, in the past 9 years, the Taliban and other insurgent groups learned a lot of skills from Al-Qaeda, and their operations are more sophisticated. So therefore, the influence of Al-Qaeda is there. On the other hand, Al-Qaeda, actually, in advancing their global agenda, are using local insurgencies. And local insurgencies take advantage of their skills and their actual logistic support. So Taliban are doing the same thing. And it is not likely that as long as this insurgency continues in Afghanistan, that Al-Qaeda will not be as active as they can be in Afghanistan.
Dr. Al-Irani, let me bring you in there. How strong, the same question applies, I think, to Yemen, which is something that's come under our radar there. How strong are Al-Qaeda in Yemen?
Thank you very much. Please allow me to reorient, I think, the themes that we are dealing with. According to the title here, the statement is that the danger of terrorism is to America and the West. This is not really very accurate. Yemen is a victim of terrorism. It's only 2 weeks ago that Al-Qaeda attacked the security station in Aden and killed 8 soldiers and 2 passers-by. So the theme of this discussion, I hope, will be dealing with terror threat to the world and not just to the United States and the West. Now, the second objective is how conflicts in Africa, Middle East, and Asia affect terrorism activities. I think these conflicts are the hotbed that breed extremism, and extremism eventually leads to terrorism. In Yemen, we have been confronting Al-Qaeda since 2000, when the USS Cole was attacked. And it has been going on, not continuously, but recently there has been an attack by American drone on a camp of Al-Qaeda in a certain place in Yemen. And then another attack, which only a month ago, hit. The informer was killed rather than the Al-Qaeda operator. In Yemen, I don't think Al-Qaeda exceeds between 500 to 700. But they are sheltered either under tribal protection or in rugged mountains, not exactly like Tora Bora, but very rugged mountains in the east. Among them is Anwar Awlaki. Anwar Awlaki, all of you have read and know about. Anwar doesn't have a real base or followers in Yemen. He's limited to his internet and YouTube. His influence is more outside Yemen rather than inside Yemen. But as a result of pressure on Al-Qaeda in Saudi Arabia, some of their leaders have crossed the borders and are now in Yemen. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is led today by a Saudi named Shahrani, and his deputy is Yemeni. And you know, a man was sent across the border from Yemen who was a Saudi, and he crossed all security measures, so to speak, bypassed everything until he reached the office of the Deputy Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, Mr. Mohammed bin Naif. And so Al-Qaeda is not very huge in number in Yemen, nor is it a threat to the regime. It is a danger to security, and it is inflicting tremendous and great economic and security, bad security image outside the world, rather than we worry that Al-Qaeda may create an Islamic emirate, whatever you call it.
Thank you.
I hope that's enough.
That's perfect start. Dr. Rotberg, is there a danger that every time, and you've written recently on Somalia, is there a danger that every time the West, and the US in particular, tries to intervene in these problems, that it makes the situation worse?
Oh yes, the intervention, when it's thoughtless, can make the situation in places like Somalia far worse. But the issue there is not so much what is happening to us, but what's happening to the Somali people. And what we must find a way to do is to develop methods of new methods of governance in southern Somalia with the cooperation of the Somali people, in order to marginalize the Al-Qaeda influence that does exist, but only again in the south. Northern Somalia is quite peaceful. There's a democratic, unrecognized country in the north. So we're really talking about an insurgency in the south, which claims to have ties to Al-Qaeda, but as in the Yemen, the number of Al-Qaeda operatives is probably fairly small.
Okay, thank you. Sabri, let me bring you in there. Western foreign policy generally in the Middle East, is there something more constructive in your view, or is there a way that the US and the Quartet, for example, could intervene more effectively in the Middle East peace process? I mean, for example, when it comes to Hamas, there's an argument that they have moved far beyond the type of thing we're talking about with Al-Qaeda, and it might be time to engage them more directly. Is that something that you think should be done?
Well, first, let me start by saying that when you talk about terrorism, there's often the perception that we should, in a way, prepare ourselves to combat terrorism, maybe by way of waging war, or knocking nations down, or maybe killing civilians. What I would like to argue today is that we will have to revisit our doctrine on combating terrorism. Terrorists only dwell on those who are despairing, people who live in anguish, and people who can be cultivated to be part of this terrorism cycle.